Hey, it's Jonathan Broadwell, creator of the Serial Wombat open source project and an embedded systems consultant for hire at my company, Broadwell Consulting Incorporated. If you need help with an embedded systems project, give me a call. Today, we're going to look at one of the new features in the v2.1.1 firmware for the Serial Wombat 18AB, and it's one I'm really excited about. One of the relative weaknesses of the Serial Wombat chip is cases where it needs to produce an exact frequency because it runs on an internal oscillator, a fast RC oscillator. And at 8 megahertz, that is accurate plus or minus 1.5% at normal voltages and room temperature. However, the PIC 24FJ256GA702 provides the ability to tune that using a software register. But we don't know for sure that it's always going to tune the same way, and we need something to tune it against. So it's starting in version 2.11, that can be accessed using a Serial Wombat protocol command. So for a Serial Wombat that's running against an Arduino or a MicroPython, there's typically a very accurate clock that's based on a crystal that provides the millis or equivalent milliseconds since startup time. By comparing that with the 1 millisecond frame counter of the Serial Wombat chip, we can tell whether the Serial Wombat chip is running fast or running slow. And I've added to the Arduino library a simple function that you call in the main loop that will update that. So let's take a look real quick. We're going to go to examples, Serial Wombat, Serial Wombat 18AB, and oscillator tuning. And in here, there's an example that shows how this works. Essentially, for 1 minute, it lets it run at its normal speed. Every 10 seconds or so, it starts homing in on the correct oscillation tuning by comparing the counts of millis versus the number of frames that have been run. So let's take a look and upload that. And we'll open the serial monitor. Now it's taking about 1 minute to compare the frames on the Serial Wombat chip against the elapsed number of millis. I'm going to cut out that delay and just go right to the end. Okay, after 1 minute, we can see that it is running about 0.57% too slow. So now it's going to start going through its updates, and we should see an update after another minute. It will have gone through about 6 cycles of tuning. Again, I'll cut this out. Okay, after a minute of running its tuning algorithm, it got that down to 0.35%. And we can see out of 60,000 milliseconds, the first time around it ran 59,661 frames. This time it ran 59,796 frames. Let's give it 1 more minute and see how the next minute shakes out. At that point, it should have been pretty perfectly tuned. Okay, after 2 minutes of tuning, it managed to get down to 0.02%. It expected to run 60,008 frames, and it ran 59,995. So at this point, we're probably getting very close to within the accuracy of the crystal that is producing the millis on the Arduino. So does it matter? Well, for some things that are proportional, things like PWM duty cycle, those are going to be spot on, but the frequency may be off a little bit. For things like motor control or LED control, we probably don't care about that very much. For other things that rely on actual real-time timing output, like say servo pulse generation, we'd really like every time we turn on the Serial Wombat chip to generate ideally the same pulses and in a way that doesn't vary with, say, temperature and the frequency oscillator. So by running this calibration routine, we can improve the repeatability of our servo pulses for a given input. Similarly, the ultrasonic distance sensor relies on a time factor that corresponds to the distance that speed of sound travels. The more accurately we can measure that pulse, the more accurately we'll be able to measure time, assuming that we also compensate for temperature and humidity and things like that. So this this particular calibration can be very useful under some circumstances. It doesn't really cost very much in terms of memory or processing power. So if you're doing anything that's at all timing related, I would highly recommend allocating one of these Serial Wombat 18AB oscillator tuner structures. I made it a separate structure instead of including it in the Serial Wombat chip, number one, because it's not supported on the 4B chip, and number two, because if you're not using it, there's no reason to allocate that memory. But as a separate object, you can just call this OsTune update that you declared the object of up here. You can call it frequently, infrequently. It'll wait at least 10 seconds before trying to make an update. And so, call this in your main loop, and over the span of a minute or two, your Serial Wombat timing accuracy will get much, much better. So that's all I have for today. Look for more videos on the newly released 2.1.1 firmware. And if you have any comments on anything, questions, leave them in the comments below. Definitely send me pictures or video of any projects you've done with the Serial Wombat chip. I'd love to feature those in some future videos. And until I talk to you again, have fun and keep making stuff. The Serial Wombat firmware is available on GitHub and is constantly being updated. Subscribe below so that you can see the latest features and videos that come out as we fix bugs and add new features. The Serial Wombat open source project was created by Broadwell Consulting Incorporated. Broadwell Consulting Incorporated provides help developing medical devices with a focus on developing embedded firmware, which is compliant with IEC 62304, ISO 14971, and ISO 13485, as well as remediation assistance for products already in production. For more information, contact John at Broadwell Consulting. Support requests for Serial Wombat should be sent to help@serialwombat.com and will be answered on an as-available basis. Also, feel free to leave your question in the comments below.